Trevir Sikkema of Pro Football Focus is on the Rude Guest Hotline. Rude, the most reliable heating and air conditioning products in the DMV. We'll get into the 4 playoff games coming up in the divisional round this weekend with him, but we got to start with the NFL draft because he does such a great job breaking the draft down in his day-to-day. Trevor, it's good to talk to you again, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Appreciate you having me back on the show.
Yeah, it's our
Always
pleasure.
good, buddy.
We appreciate you. I wanted to start with Washington at 7 and just kind of your broad brush thoughts on where they landed and how things look for a team that could certainly use a playmaker, but also is desperate for defensive help. Dante Moore going back to school seems like it could be a little bit of a fly in the ointment there as a non-quarterback could go off the board ahead of them.
Yeah, and obviously, like, if you don't need a quarterback, then as many quarterbacks as possible to go up in front of you is normally more advantageous. I don't think it's that big of a blow for Washington specifically, just because it's not like they're picking second, third, fourth, something like that. So when you get down to 7, it's a little less impactful when you have one less quarterback to think about that would go right in front of you. But for Washington, it's very interesting because I think that this is a defense that obviously one of the older defenses in the NFL, a defense that didn't play well last year. So you look at 2 fronts where you've got reasons to believe that they need major upgrades. And the fact of the matter is that they've basically got any position that they want to pick at number 7. You want kind of a defensive chess piece. If Caleb Downs gets to you, okay, you feel great about that. You want a pass rusher? All right, Reuben Bain, Arvell Reese, David Bailey, Keldrick Falk, like those guys are potentially in the conversation there. If you wanted a linebacker, Sonny Styles from Ohio State, I feel like fits the bill. If you wanted another outside corner, I think Jermon McCoy is an unbelievable man-to-man quarter. Mansour Delane can do it all for you. So I think Washington's actually in a pretty good spot, and they're in such a good spot, I would say, that this is a team that I actually really believe could be a strong trade-down candidate, given the fact that they don't have a lot of draft picks in the first 5 rounds of this draft. And so to me, they're in a situation where not only do I feel good about a player that could be a high-impact guy for them available at number 7, I think that they could have a plethora of players to the point where they might believe they can trade back and still be okay and get a really good, impactful player at a position that they really need and pick up some draft picks that they really need too.
Well, you lead me to my question about trading back. So obviously value is the name of the game, right? So what is the difference? I'm just going to sort of make this up here between, say, a David Bailey, if you have to stay home at 7 because you don't get good value, and then maybe defensive end or edge 3 or 4, like whether regardless of whether you have grades of Falk or maybe Caden McDonald, Ohio State, etc. What's the gap there in terms of someone that's in the top 10 versus the teens? And is it then worth it to go pick up a third just to move back a little bit to get someone that's maybe roughly equivalent, or is it kind of a seismic canyon between the two?
Yeah, I think that there's tiers, and once you start talking about like the because I think. I'm a big Reuben Bain Jr. fan. I know there's a lot of people out there who are, worried about the arm length and some things like that. I think he's an absolute stud. I watch him, and not only does he win with great ability, he wins with athleticism, he wins with strength, he wins with technique, he wins with effort. He has those different types of wins all over his tape. I think he's an absolute stud for you. He's a true 3-down defensive lineman. So I kind of think that he's the cream of the crop at the defensive end spot. But then after that, I think there's a tier 2 of guys where you have a handful of players. David Bailey, I think he's kind of a one-dimensional dude, but that one dimension is like the best trump card that you could have for an edge rusher, right? It's that first step explosiveness. It's that Nick Benito. It's that Bruce Irvin type of like, hey, are they going to be a 3-down player for you? Do you feel great about him against the run? Okay, maybe not as much, but when this guy pins his ear back, that first step is so unbelievable. It's almost as if the rest of the stuff doesn't matter. So you've got him. You've got a bigger guy like Keldrick Falk. You have Cassius Howell, who he has the same issue of having small arms, but such a frenetic pass rusher, such an effective pass rusher. TJ Parker from Clemson. And then I'd throw Akeem Messidor from Miami as well in there. I know he's one of the oldest prospects in the class, but my goodness, did I love his tape when I was watching him. So all that to say, like, you get to number 7, and if you're at number 7 and Washington says, hey, we love the first step explosiveness from David Bailey, you're probably not going to be able to replicate that anywhere else. So you'd probably stick there at number 7 and take him. But if they're one of those teams that looks at David Bailey and says, yeah, okay, very good speed rusher, finesse rusher, but I got some holes in his game. Is he a little bit more of a designated pass rusher type? Well, then all of a sudden that probably opens things up for you to be okay with TJ Parker, with Akeem Messidor, with Cassius Howe, like guys like that. So if that's the case, now you're talking about, all right, well, we can move back from 7, I don't know, to anywhere within the top 20, somewhere around 15, middle of the first round, pick up a couple of more draft picks. And so that's probably the scenario and how I would set up the thought overall with this edge rush class.
Trevir Sikkema of PFF with us on Grant and Danny. How far back could they go and still get a couple of the good defensive players, do you think? Like, I'm wondering, I've been saying for a couple of weeks, my favorite possibility would be moving back into the teens and getting like Sonny Styles. But now it doesn't look like you could safely do that. Is 7 too early even to grab him? Maybe that wouldn't be that crazy. I don't know. But like, can you move back 5, 7, 10 spots and still feel like you can get those guys? Or if you really like them, do you just have to pounce on them?
It kind of depends on what you want because, like I said, I think that there's a couple of edge rushers that you could feel comfortable with if you're moving somewhere between, let's say, right around 15 or maybe somewhere between 15 and 20. I think you could probably still get one of those edge rushers around that same sort of range. I think for defensive tackles like Caden McDonald or Peter Woods, like those guys are available there. Corners, I know a lot of people like Brandon Cisse, Jermon McCoy, Mansour Delane, like those are guys that you could probably get within that top 20 range and trade back a little bit. But if you want a safety, you basically just have Caleb Downs to pick at that point. If you want a linebacker, like a true linebacker, who I think could be like a coverage backer for you, because Arvell Reese is a little bit different. Arvell Reese is kind of like he's like an apex predator kind of a player. Like he's almost like the modern day Sam linebacker hybrid where, yeah, you'll play him on the line of scrimmage a little bit, but you really just want this guy to roam around the second level. So I think that those guys are almost like in categories of their own. If you are interested in Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, you're not really going to be able to get a player like that basically anywhere else in this draft. And I think that if you're trading back to number 15, you're not really going to have a chance at any of those 3 players. So it kind of just depends. It depends how focused they are on what they would really want and prioritize from a defensive player in the first round. Because like I said, if they go into this draft saying we have to get an edge rusher, well, all of a sudden I think you have a lot of flexibility because of the edge rushers that are there. But if they go into this saying, yeah, I mean, Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, they're the crown jewel. If we can get them, we need to. Then you're not moving back for number 7 because you won't be able to get him even a little bit later, I don't think.
Trevir Sikkema, excellent, breaking down the NFL and the draft for PFF, joining us on Grant and Danny. I looked this up. I don't remember the exact results. I don't have it in front of me, but it has been very, very rare for teams to trade up in the draft more than a pick, essentially, for a non-quarterback. And in a world where Fernando Mendoza possibly goes 1 to the Raiders or 2 or whatever, and there's not another quarterback seemingly in the top 10 convo, it does seem like while I'm going to be talking about trading back every day between now and the draft, it feels not that likely for Washington. Am I overstating that?
No, I don't think that you are, especially because you look at the other premium positions and like offensive tackle is not as strong as it normally is every year. You playmakers at wide receiver, like there's good ones. I love Jordan Tyson. I love Mekhi Lemon. I love Carnell Tate, but they're not Megatron. They're not Julio Jones. They don't have that sort of renown coming into the draft. And so you're right. Everybody talks about trading down. It does take 2 to tango, but I do think that it almost goes into the conversation that we were just having on the last question, where if Washington is very fluid in who they want to get, well, now all of a sudden, not only are you open to trading back even when one of Arvell Reese or Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles might be on the board, you're also now allowing yourself to sort of dangle those guys like as the carrot to trade up. Because those are the players that I would say, again, the similar conversation that we just had, those are the players that are sort of like you either draft them or you don't get anyone else who's close to them in this class. So you're right. It isn't often that teams trade up for these non-quarterbacks in that way, but I do think that this draft class being a little bit more of a down draft class overall does mean that you get to perhaps have these conversations with teams to jump up a little bit. Now, will it be for the price of a quarterback like we've seen before? No, I think the price will be a little bit less, but still it kind of goes into that. If they don't look at one of those 3 guys and say, yes, if they're on the board, we've got to come away with one of them. If they're in the trade down conversation at all, they're probably using those players as bait, for lack of a better word.
Trevor, you watch so much film and you study these guys and you know so damn much. I'm the opposite. I'm the worst kind of evaluator, if you even want to call it that. I watch a player for a game, fall in love, and then anything that happens that runs counter to my initial perception, it's like someone else's fault. Does that make sense? Like, the worst you can be at this is what I am. There's my caveat. I'm in love with Kenyon Sadiq. That's all I can think about now in this draft. It depends on where you have him, just in the teens at this moment. I'm sure as he rips through the combine and has the greatest 3-cone ever and jumps 1,000,000 feet high, people will realize, oh my God, this guy's such a freak. But just kind of give me your thoughts on him and the difference between him and maybe the rest of the tight end class.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I watched him over the summer, and when you watch guys over the summer, I think summer scouting is a little bit different of an evaluation than a final scouting report, right? Because you're watching a player who at least has one full year of college football left, of course, if they're healthy, and you think of all the things that they could potentially be. A lot of times you're talking about underclassmen, these guys that are becoming draft eligible for the first time, and Kenyon Sadiq was one of those stories being a sophomore last year. Now, he didn't play a lot the previous year, at least as a receiver, because you look at the types of players that Oregon had to throw to. It was Tez Johnson. It was Evan Stewart for a little bit. Terrence Ferguson was in that mix as well. And so they ran their passing offense a lot through wide receivers. And so you go through summer scouting this year and you go, hold on now. This other tight end, this Kenyon Sadiq guy, he's about to pop this year. And he didn't. And they didn't feature him. Now, they featured him a lot. He played a lot, but they didn't feature him in the offense, even when their wide receivers weren't super strong last year or this past season. And they've got a guy who could be a top 3 overall quarterback. The run game wasn't super strong. And you just go, man, why wasn't he involved? And I went into the final scouting report for Kenyon Sadiq, and I thought that I was going to go into it thinking that I would kind of come out and be a little bit of a hater. I would be like, all right, well, he's not very good. I watch his tape, and where I still wonder why there wasn't more production from him. It's hard to watch a player like that and go, nah, I'm out, second round. Because I see a lot of people go, oh, I think he's a second round type of a player, like an early second round player. I don't know how you watch a guy who's this athletically gifted at a position where if you are a major difference maker, you mean a lot to your team. And I just think back end of the first round is like at worst where he's going to go, because you just kind of have to take chances on players like that. So I felt as though athletically it's still all there for him. Is he as natural of a catcher as I wanted him to be this past year? No, I mean, there were some instances where, okay, he's letting the ball come into his body a little bit. He's looking a little bit awkward with how he's coming away with the football or how he's catching. I wish he was a little bit more natural as a pass catcher. And I think probably they see him like that in practice all the time. So maybe that's why he wasn't as emphasized as he was. But he's a hell of a blocker. Pound for pound, he's really strong. You can use him in inline situations. You can use him as a wing back. You can use him as a lead blocker. You can use him as a big slot to the outside, blocking defensive backs in space. So there's so many different ways that you could use him that even if you come away a little bit disappointed from what he has been as a receiver in college, that's still a back end of the first round type of a player, especially in this class.
Trevor, I'm going to separate for a moment that Bills-Broncos game because it's almost a pick 'em. I think it's a 1.5-point spread right now. But for the other 3 games, rank the underdogs in terms of likeliness to pull off an upset. So San Francisco, Houston, and and Chicago against LA. Bears, Texans, Niners, rank them in likeliness to win this weekend.
I would say I would have the Bears at number 1 simply because of the weather, to be honest with you. I mean, if that game is basically played anywhere other than Soldier Field, I'd probably take the Rams. But because it's at Soldier Field, I think I'm taking the Bears here. We've talked about how Matthew Stafford has struggled in inclement weather and cold weather throughout his career, and I think that we saw that last year as well. I've told people that if that game that they played against the Philadelphia Eagles, not to take anything away from the Eagles, if they play that game basically anywhere else, it doesn't have to be at home. It doesn't have to be in L.A. You play that in Dallas Cowboys Stadium as a neutral site game, I think the Rams win last year. And I think if you would have done the same thing here, if you're playing this on a neutral site game, I'm taking the Rams. But because of the weather, I'd actually take the Bears in that one. Second, I'd put the Niners. I don't love the Niners matchup on paper, but hey, Kyle Shanahan's my coach of the year pick. And I think that anytime you're playing an in-division opponent, anything could happen. the Texans, I understand they've got the best defense in the NFL, but man, C.J. Stroud has really struggled this year. He's been way worse this year than he was last year under pressure. We know how bad their offensive line can be. I know they ran the ball really well against the Steelers, but that was an outlier compared to what we've seen throughout the rest of the season. That was the second best game in basically almost every metric that we have from them, if not the best game for the Texans on the ground. And so I don't really exactly think that's repeatable with them going up against the New England Patriots. And so I would say that ranking the underdogs, I'd have Chicago number 1 as most likely, then San Francisco, and then Houston number 3.
I don't trust Buffalo's defense to stop me, you, Grant, and a couple of our producers at this point. But is Denver's offense good enough to take advantage of that?
Yeah, I think that this is an extremely intriguing game, and when we did the PFF preview show, I actually picked Buffalo, and I'll give you 2 reasons why. One of them does have to do with the defensive side. The first side, though, is on their offense, and quite frankly, they just have the best player left in the playoffs in Josh Allen. They have the alien at quarterback. He was taken off of the injury report. Now, I'm sure that he is still pretty beat up, but we know he's playing in this game, and he's not going into it with any injury designation, even though Buffalo really struggled to run the ball last week. The Denver Broncos play more man coverage than almost anybody else in the NFL with cover 1 and cover 0. Well, when you play man coverage, all those defensive backs have their back to the ball and their back to the quarterback. You don't want to do that against Josh Allen. So either the Broncos are playing a coverage shell that they're not as comfortable with, or that they don't run nearly as much to change things up to mitigate that, or they're going to give him the opportunity to run the football. On the other side of things, I agree with you. Buffalo's defense as a whole this season, and even last season, been disappointing. And I think they've really struggled in a lot of ways. However, what they did last week to Trevor Lawrence was very, very interesting. Sean McDermott was in his bag. Trevor Lawrence was one of the hottest quarterbacks in the NFL over the last month and a half. And Sean McDermott had so many pre-snap looks that totally changed post-snap that Trevor Lawrence was not ready for it. Now, that matters for this game specifically because when you look at the last month and a half, Bo Nix has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when he is getting rid of the ball before 3 seconds. He's got an 85.6 PFF passing grade. He's got 7 big-time throws, and he's got only 2 turnover-worthy plays. But when he holds on to the ball for more than 3 seconds, when he has to hesitate, when he double clutches those throws, when the defense doesn't look the same pre-snap that it was post-snap, he all of a sudden drops all the way from an 85.6 to a 56.5 passing grade, 7 turnover-worthy plays, and just 1 big-time throw. So if McDermott, the veteran defensive coach that he is in his bag once again and is confusing Bo Nix in his first playoff game, pre- and post-snap, I actually like the Bills in this one, and I would take them getting the points if you can still get it.
Where are you on the development of Caleb Williams, the leap he's made this year, how much more ceiling there is? It feels to me like, because of the missed throws, not a finished product, still flawed, but man, does he make some incredible moments happen.
Yeah, I mean, he is. We are seeing the ceilings of why you drafted this player number 1 overall and why he could be one of the most special quarterbacks in the NFL. Look, I've tweeted this out, and people are very, very quick to point out that I go, okay, well, look at some of the insane do-or-die passes that he has completed over the last, I would say, 2 months. And a lot of people are quick to point out, like, oh, why is he in do-or-die situations? And I understand, like, he is sometimes a reason why why Chicago is in a hole. But he's also the one with the shovel digging him out of the hole as well. And some of those throws that he has are just unbelievably special. What I love the most about him this year is you see so many times at USC and in his first year when he was in Chicago, he's still got the Superman cape on. He will flush out of the pocket. He will get to the sideline. He will keep his eyes downfield until the very last second where he's about to get hit by a defender who's running towards him, and he will try to make a throw that he should not. This year, he will continue to extend the play as long as he can as an escape artist, but if it's not there, he throws it away. And I didn't even know if that was a guarantee that we'd ever get that from Caleb Williams. And we're getting it here in his second year, I think, because of how much he respects and trusts Ben Johnson. So, yes, is it as consistent as it needs to be? No, not quite. However, this is a quarterback who has all the talent in the world, who got much, much better this year about keeping the ball out of harm's way while also learning the ratio of needing to push the ball deep down the field and needing to continue to be special. I was really encouraged by what I saw from him this year.
The arsonist with the best fire hose, it seems like, right? Get you into trouble and then get you out of it. Give me your Super Bowl matchup.
man, what did I have? I actually had Jags Rams at the beginning of the playoffs. Now, obviously, I can't go with that anymore here. Man, I think that it's Seattle, New England. I'm gonna go Seahawks, Patriots for a Super Bowl rematch. God, what year was that? Not that long ago. Not too long ago here.
That was the goal
Malcolm
line
Butler play. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, I will go with the Seahawks versus the Patriots for the teams that are left to face off in the Super Bowl.
Trevor, always enjoy having you on. Really, really thank you for the time today, and we'll catch up soon, buddy. Enjoy your trip out to the Super Bowl and the rest of the postseason.
I appreciate it, guys. Anytime.